"Get that kid out of here right now." The restaurant manager shouted over the chaos as Tyler Justin threw another chair across the dining room, the crash echoing through the five-star establishment like a gunshot. Kevin Justin, billionaire tech CEO, was crawling on the floor of the most exclusive restaurant in the city, desperately trying to catch his 8-year-old autistic son who was having the most violent meltdown of his life. Tyler was screaming so loud that wine glasses were vibrating on tables. He was throwing food, kicking chairs, and hitting himself while other diners recorded everything on their phones. "I'm calling security," the manager threatened, his face red with anger. Kevin's expensive suit was soaked with sweat and covered in mashed potatoes as he tried to grab Tyler, but every touch made his son scream even louder. "Tyler, please," Kevin begged, but it was hopeless. The boy was completely out of control, making sounds like a wounded animal while other customers whispered and pointed. Kevin was about to give up and flee in complete humiliation when something impossible happened. A young black waitress walked calmly through the chaos, dimmed the lights above their section, and sat down at Tyler's eye level. She began humming softly, and within 2 minutes, Tyler was completely calm, making eye contact with her for the first time that evening. Kevin stared in absolute shock. How did this stranger accomplish in 2 minutes what he couldn't do in 8 years of being Tyler's father? But what Kevin didn't know was that this moment would change everything. This wasn't just about calming down an autistic child. This was the beginning of a love story that would challenge everything Kevin thought he knew about family, about love, and about what truly matters in life. If you want to see how this incredible story unfolds, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell because you won't want to miss what happens next. What would you do if a stranger showed you something about your own child that you never knew? Let me know in the comments below. But first, let me tell you who these people really were, because their backgrounds will make what happens next even more powerful. Kevin Justin wasn't always a billionaire. 20 years ago, he was just a broke college dropout working 16-hour days in his parents' garage, building what would eventually become Tech Vision Corp. He had nothing but a dream and an unshakable belief that he could change the world through technology. And he did. By age 35, Kevin had built a tech empire worth over $8 billion. But success came with a price. Kevin married Victoria, a stunning socialite from one of the oldest and wealthiest families in the country. Victoria brought him into high society, taught him how to navigate the world of old money, and gave him something he thought he wanted: respectability. For 10 years, their marriage looked perfect from the outside. They lived in a $50 million estate, attended charity galas, and appeared on magazine covers as the ultimate power couple. Then Tyler was born, and everything changed. Tyler was brilliant. At just 8 years old, he could solve complex math problems in his head and see patterns that amazed even Kevin. But Tyler was also autistic, with severe sensory processing issues that made the world feel overwhelming and painful. Loud noises felt like explosions. Bright lights burned his eyes. Unexpected touches made him panic. The only things that brought him comfort were his small blue elephant toy and his noise-canceling headphones. But there was something else about Tyler that broke Kevin's heart. The boy hadn't spoken a single word in over a year. Not since the day his mother, Victoria, told him he was too much work and suggested he might be happier somewhere else. Tyler heard those words, and it was like a switch turned off inside him. He retreated into silence, desperately wanting his father's attention and love, but unable to ask for it. Victoria was embarrassed by Tyler's condition. She refused to attend his therapy sessions, made cruel comments about his behavior, and constantly pressured Kevin to send their son to what she called a special facility. Behind her polite smile and charitable donations, Victoria held views that she disguised as traditional values, but were really just racism and prejudice. She was currently on a month-long trip to Europe with her wealthy friends, leaving Kevin to handle Tyler alone. Kevin felt trapped between his demanding wife and his struggling son. He was a workaholic who could solve billion-dollar problems but couldn't figure out how to connect with his own child. Despite all his wealth, Kevin felt emotionally isolated and desperately alone. The waitress who had just performed a miracle with Tyler was named Keisha Thompson. At 26, she was working 3 jobs just to survive. She waited tables at the restaurant during the day, cleaned offices at night, and did online tutoring in between. Every penny she earned went toward supporting her disabled younger brother and paying for her own education. Keisha was studying special education online while working those brutal hours because she had a dream. She wanted to open her own therapy center for special needs children. But right now, she was 3 months behind on rent and could barely afford groceries. She had been the sole caregiver for her brother since she was 18, when their parents died. That changed her life forever. What made Keisha special wasn't just her education or her experience. She had a natural intuition with special needs children that couldn't be taught in any classroom. She could see what they needed, feel what they were feeling, and somehow communicate with them in ways that amazed everyone around her. But Keisha had no idea that the little boy she had just helped and his billionaire father were about to change her life in ways she never imagined. As Tyler sat quietly tracing patterns on the table, Kevin reached for his wallet with shaking hands. He pulled out $500 bills and tried to hand them to Keisha. "Please, take this. I don't know how you did what you just did, but..." Keisha gently pushed the money away. "I didn't do it for money, Mr. Justin. I did it because Tyler needed help." Kevin stared at her in shock. "You know who I am?" "I've seen you on TV," Keisha said softly. "But more importantly, I recognize the signs of a parent struggling to connect with their special needs child. You're not the first father I've seen break down like this." Kevin felt exposed, vulnerable in a way that his billions couldn't protect him from. Here was this waitress, this stranger, who had seen right through his carefully constructed facade to the broken father underneath. For the first time in years, someone wasn't looking at him as Kevin Justin, the billionaire CEO. They were looking at him as Kevin Justin, the desperate father who just wanted to help his son. What Kevin didn't tell Keisha was the real reason he was struggling so much. At home, his marriage was falling apart, piece by piece. Victoria constantly criticized everything Tyler did. When he was stimulated by flapping his hands, she would hiss, "Stop that, you look ridiculous." When he had meltdowns, she would lock herself in her room and refuse to come out. She had never attended a single therapy session, claiming she was too busy with her social commitments. The worst conversations happened late at night when Tyler was finally asleep. Victoria would pour herself another glass of wine and start her campaign. "He needs to be in a facility," she would say over their morning coffee. "It's for the best, Kevin. He'll get professional help, and we can have our lives back." Kevin knew what she really meant. She wanted Tyler gone, so she wouldn't have to deal with the embarrassment of having an autistic child. Kevin remembered the day Tyler was diagnosed. Instead of supporting their son, Victoria locked herself in their bedroom and cried for 3 hours. Not tears of sadness for Tyler's struggles, but tears of anger about how this would affect their social standing. "What will people think?" she had sobbed. "What will they say at the country club?" Every family gathering became a nightmare. Victoria would spend hours before events coaching Tyler on how to act normal. She would hide his comfort items, force him to make eye contact with relatives, and then get furious when he inevitably had a meltdown. "You're embarrassing us," she would whisper harshly in his ear, not caring that her words were crushing his spirit. Kevin felt torn between protecting his son and maintaining his marriage. Every day was a battle between his love for Tyler and his fear of losing everything he had built with Victoria. He knew that if he chose Tyler over Victoria's demands, she would take half his fortune and probably try to get custody just to hurt him. But watching his son retreat further into silence was killing him slowly. What Kevin didn't know was that Keisha understood his struggle in ways he couldn't imagine. She had been fighting her own impossible battle for 8 years. Her 16-year-old brother Danny had cerebral palsy and intellectual disabilities. When their parents died in that car accident, 18-year-old Keisha became his sole caregiver overnight. While other kids her age were going to college and starting their careers, Keisha was learning how to manage medications, navigate insurance companies, and fight for her brother's rights. She remembered those first months after the accident, when she would cry herself to sleep every night, wondering how she was going to take care of Danny when she could barely take care of herself. But Keisha never gave up. She worked 3 jobs not by choice, but because Danny's medical bills were crushing. She would serve tables at the restaurant from 6 in the morning until 3 in the afternoon, then rush home to help Danny with his afternoon therapy session. After getting him settled for the evening, she would go clean offices from 9 at night until 3 in the morning. She was 3 months behind on rent, and the eviction notice was already taped to her door. The hardest part wasn't the physical exhaustion. It was watching other people her age living normal lives while she sacrificed everything for Danny. She turned down job opportunities, rejected dates, and gave up her own dreams just to keep her brother safe and cared for. Some nights, she would sit in her car after work and just cry from the overwhelming weight of it all. But Danny was worth it. He was the sweetest, most loving person Keisha had ever known. Despite his disabilities, he had this incredible ability to sense when people were hurting and somehow make them feel better. He was the reason Keisha was studying special education. She wanted to help other families like theirs, families that were struggling and needed someone who truly understood. Over the following weeks, while Victoria was living it up in Europe, Kevin found himself doing something he had never done before. He started bringing Tyler to the restaurant regularly. At first, he told himself it was just for Tyler's benefit. Keisha had this magical ability to calm his son, to make him feel safe in a world that usually felt overwhelming. But as the visits continued, Kevin began to notice something else happening. Tyler wasn't just calming down around Keisha. He was actually trying to communicate. He would point at things to show her. He would nod when she asked him questions. He even attempted a few hand gestures that looked almost like sign language. The first time Tyler smiled at Keisha, Kevin felt his heart nearly stop. Tyler hadn't smiled in months. At home, he moved through their mansion like a ghost, playing quietly in his room, eating meals in silence, and going to bed without saying goodnight. But here in this restaurant, with this remarkable woman, Tyler was coming alive again. Kevin found himself looking forward to these visits more than he wanted to admit. There was something about Keisha's warmth, her genuine care for Tyler, that made Kevin feel something he hadn't felt in years. He felt seen. He felt understood. He felt like maybe, just maybe, he wasn't failing as a father after all. Keisha would sit with Tyler and work on simple exercises. She would help him trace letters and spilled salt on the table. She would show him how to use his hands to communicate when words felt too hard. She would hum the same melody that had first calmed him down, and Tyler would close his eyes and actually relax. And slowly, incredibly, Tyler began to respond. But it wasn't just Tyler who was changing. Kevin found himself staying longer at the restaurant, ordering multiple courses just to spend more time watching Keisha work with his son. He started asking her about her studies, her dreams, her life. He learned that she was working toward her degree in special education, that she had a disabled brother she cared for, that she dreamed of opening her own therapy center someday. Kevin was amazed by Keisha's strength. Here was this young woman who had every reason to be bitter about her circumstances, but instead she radiated kindness and hope. She treated Tyler with such dignity and respect, never talking down to him or treating him like he was broken. She saw the brilliant, beautiful child that Tyler was, not the burden that Victoria saw. What Kevin didn't realize was that he was falling in love, not just with Keisha's ability to help his son, but with Keisha herself. The way she laughed at Tyler's silly faces. The way she would get down on the floor to play with him when the restaurant was slow. The way she never made Kevin feel like a failure, even when he was clearly struggling. The way she seemed to understand both of them in ways that no one else ever had. For the first time in years, Kevin felt hope. He started imagining what life could be like if Tyler could be this happy all the time. He started wondering what it would be like to have a partner who actually supported him instead of constantly criticizing him. He started dreaming of a future where Tyler could thrive instead of just surviving. Kevin had no idea that these innocent restaurant visits were about to change everything. Because Victoria was coming home soon, and she was not going to be happy about what she found. The text message Kevin received that evening would shatter this peaceful bubble and force him to make the hardest decision of his life. It was a Tuesday afternoon when the impossible happened. Kevin was sitting across from Tyler at their usual table, watching Keisha help his son arrange the sugar packets into perfect patterns. Tyler was unusually focused that day, almost like he was working up the courage to do something important. Then, without warning, Tyler looked directly at Keisha and spoke his first words in over a year. "Keisha." "Nice." Kevin dropped his coffee cup. It shattered on the floor, but he didn't even notice. Tears streamed down his face as he stared at his son in complete shock. Tyler had spoken. After 13 months of silence, his boy had finally found his voice again. But Tyler wasn't finished. He turned to his father with those big, innocent eyes and said something that would change everything. "Daddy, marry Keisha." Kevin's heart stopped. He looked at Tyler, then at Keisha, then back at Tyler. His 8-year-old son had just said what Kevin had been too afraid to even think. In that moment, Kevin realized something that shook him to his core. He wasn't just grateful to Keisha for helping Tyler. He was falling in love with her. Not just because of her connection with Tyler, but because she had shown him what genuine love and acceptance looked like. For the first time in years, Kevin felt truly seen and understood. Keisha didn't care about his money, his status, or his business empire. She cared about the man he was when he was with his son. She saw the father he was trying to become, not the failure he thought he was. Kevin spent 10 years married to Victoria, but he had never felt the kind of deep, soul-level connection he felt with Keisha. With Victoria, everything was about appearances, about maintaining their image, about what other people thought. With Keisha, everything was about authenticity, about being real, about actually caring for each other. Kevin's moment of joy was about to be shattered. Victoria returned from Europe 3 days early, and she was furious. She heard from one of her society friends that Kevin has been seen repeatedly at the same restaurant with Tyler. When she confronted Kevin that evening, her voice was ice cold. "I hear you've been taking Tyler to see some black waitress," she said, practically spitting the words. "What exactly is going on, Kevin?" Kevin tried to explain how much Keisha helped Tyler, how she had gotten him to speak again, how she understood his needs in ways no one else ever had. But Victoria wasn't listening. She was too busy working herself into a racist rage. "I don't care what she did," Victoria snapped. "I will not have my family associated with that kind of person. You will fire her immediately, and you will never see her again." Kevin felt something break inside him. "That kind of person? Victoria, she's the most caring, intelligent, compassionate person I've ever met. She's studying to be a special education teacher. She's changed Tyler's life. And I suppose you think she's changed yours too?" Victoria's voice was venomous. "Don't be ridiculous, Kevin. She's a waitress. She's using you for your money. She's never asked me for anything," Kevin shot back. "She wouldn't even accept a tip." Victoria's face twisted with rage. "Choose, Kevin. Right now. It's either your family and everything we've built together, or that woman. Because I promise you, if you don't end this immediately, I will divorce you and take half of everything you own, and I will fight for custody of Tyler just to make sure you never see him again." Kevin stared at his wife in horror. This was the woman he married? This was the woman he trusted with his heart, his future, his son? Victoria wasn't just threatening to leave him. She was threatening to use Tyler as a weapon, to rip away the most important thing in Kevin's life, just to punish him for defending someone who had shown them both nothing but kindness. Meanwhile, Keisha was facing her own crisis. Word had gotten back to her about Victoria's return and the family conflict. She felt sick to her stomach. She never meant to cause problems for Kevin and Tyler. She had just wanted to help a struggling child, and now she was apparently destroying their family. That night, Keisha made the most difficult decision of her life. She wrote a letter of resignation and left it on her manager's desk. She couldn't bear the thought of being the reason Tyler lost his father, or the reason Kevin lost his son. She had to step away, even though it meant losing the two people who had brought so much joy into her life. But stepping away wasn't going to be easy. Keisha was already 3 months behind on rent, and without her restaurant job, she wouldn't be able to afford to stay in the city. She had been looking at bus tickets to Alabama, where her aunt lived. It would mean leaving behind her dreams of opening a therapy center, leaving behind her special education studies, leaving behind everything she had worked for. But at least her brother Danny would have a roof over his head. As Keisha packed her few belongings that night, she couldn't stop thinking about Tyler. Would he understand why she disappeared? Would he think she abandoned him? Would he stop speaking again? If you're wondering how this heartbreaking situation could possibly work out, make sure you subscribe, because what happens next will either restore your faith in love or break your heart completely. What would you do if you had to choose between the love of your life and your child? Let me know in the comments below. Because Kevin was about to face the most impossible decision any parent could imagine, and his choice would determine not just his own future, but the futures of everyone he loved. The next morning, Victoria called Kevin into their marble-floored living room and delivered an ultimatum that would change everything. She stood by their floor-to-ceiling windows, her back straight, her voice cold and calculated. She had clearly been planning this moment, rehearsing her words to deliver maximum impact. "I've been thinking about this all night, Kevin. You have a choice to make. You can choose your family's reputation, your business empire, and everything we've built together. Or you can choose that woman. But you cannot have both." Victoria's threat wasn't empty, and Kevin knew it. Her family had connections that went back generations. Old money, old power, old influence that could destroy Kevin's business relationships with a few phone calls. These weren't just idle threats from an angry wife. Victoria came from the kind of family that owned senators, bought judges, and crushed anyone who crossed them. "My father sits on the boards of 3 companies you do business with," she continued, her voice dripping with malice. "My brother is partners with 2 of your biggest investors. My uncle runs the bank that holds your corporate loans. Choose wisely, Kevin, because if you choose her, I will make sure you lose everything." Kevin felt his stomach turn. He built TechVision Corp from nothing, but he knew how quickly empires could fall when the right people decided you were expendable. Victoria's family was destroying careers and crushing dreams for over a century. They had perfected the art of making people disappear from high society, of making their lives so unbearable that they had no choice but to surrender. But then Victoria said something that crossed a line Kevin never thought she would cross. "And I will take Tyler away from you. I will prove in court that you're an unfit father who abandoned his family for some black waitress. I will make sure you never see your son again." The way she said, "black waitress," made Kevin's blood run cold. There was such hatred in her voice, such disgust, that Kevin realized he had been married to a stranger for 10 years. This wasn't just about Keisha. This was about Victoria's deep-seated racism, her belief that people like Keisha were somehow less than human. "I have photographs of you at that restaurant," Victoria continued. "I have witnesses who will testify that you've been neglecting Tyler to carry on this inappropriate relationship. I have private investigators who have been documenting your every move, Do you really think any judge will give custody to a man who abandoned his disabled child for a fling with the help? For 10 years, Kevin had bent to Victoria's will. He compromised his values, ignored his instincts, and let her control their lives because he thought it was easier than fighting. He watched her treat Tyler like an embarrassment, listened to her cruel comments about his condition, and had even considered her suggestion about institutionalizing their son because he was too exhausted to fight anymore. What would you have done in Kevin's position? Would you have the courage to choose love over social expectations? Let me know in the comments below. As Kevin stood there listening to his wife threaten to use their autistic son as a weapon, something inside Kevin snapped. He thought about Tyler's face when Keisha first calmed him down. He thought about his son's first words in over a year. He thought about how Tyler had asked him to marry Keisha, and how that innocent request had shown Kevin what real love looked like. You know what, Victoria? Kevin's voice was quiet but filled with steel. Keisha has done more for Tyler in a few weeks than you've done in 8 years. She's never once made him feel ashamed of who he is. She never locked herself in her room when he needed help. She's never suggested that he'd be better off in some facility where we wouldn't have to deal with him. Victoria's face went white. How dare you? No, how dare you? Kevin interrupted, his voice rising. Tyler is our son. He's not some embarrassment to be hidden away. He's not some burden to be managed. He's a brilliant, loving, beautiful boy who deserves parents who accept him exactly as he is. Kevin took a step closer to his wife, and for the first time in their marriage, she actually stepped back. You want to know what opened my eyes? It was watching Tyler with Keisha. Watching him relax for the first time in years. Watching him smile. Watching him try to communicate because someone finally made him feel safe enough to try. Kevin, you're being ridiculous. Am I? Kevin's voice was getting louder now, 10 years of suppressed anger finally erupting. When was the last time you hugged Tyler? When was the last time you told him you loved him? When was the last time you sat with him during a meltdown instead of hiding in your room? Victoria's silence was deafening. You want to know what I choose? I choose Tyler. I choose his happiness over your reputation. I choose his needs over your social standing. And if that means I choose Keisha, then so be it. Because she's the only person who's ever seen Tyler for who he really is. Kevin paused, his chest heaving with emotion. And you know what else? She's the only person who's ever seen me for who I really am. Not the billionaire, not the CEO, not the perfect husband you wanted me to be. She sees the father I'm trying to become, and she doesn't judge me for failing. She helps me do better. Victoria's mask of composure finally cracked. You're making the biggest mistake of your life, Kevin. I will destroy you for this. I will take everything you've ever worked for. I will make sure you lose your son, your company, your reputation, everything. You will regret this for the rest of your life. And she tried to. 2 days later, Kevin was served with divorce papers at his office. Victoria was seeking full custody of Tyler, claiming that Kevin's inappropriate relationship with the household staff made him an unfit father. She was demanding half of everything Kevin owned, including his shares in TechVision Corp. But Victoria's legal strategy was even more vicious than Kevin expected. Her lawyers painted him as a man who had abandoned his family responsibilities for a fling with a waitress. They questioned his judgment, his priorities, and his fitness as a father. They suggested that his relationship with Keisha was evidence of a midlife crisis that made him dangerous to Tyler's well-being. The custody battle that followed was brutal and public. Victoria's family used their media connections to leak stories about Kevin's affair with a restaurant worker. Headlines screamed about the billionaire's racial scandal and tech CEO's inappropriate relationship. Kevin's picture appeared on magazine covers next to photos of Keisha leaving work, creating a narrative that painted him as a predator and her as a gold digger. Victoria's lawyers were relentless. They brought in witnesses who testified about Kevin's erratic behavior and obsession with the waitress. They presented evidence of his frequent visits to the restaurant, suggesting that he had been neglecting Tyler to pursue his own selfish interests. They even tried to argue that Kevin's relationship with Keisha was evidence of racial fetishization, that he was using her to rebel against his proper upbringing. Kevin's lawyers fought back, presenting evidence of Victoria's neglect, her refusal to participate in Tyler's care, and her attempts to have him institutionalized. They showed the court videos of Victoria's cruel treatment of Tyler, her embarrassment about his condition, and her pattern of emotional abuse. They brought in Tyler's therapists, who testified about the dramatic improvement in his condition since he had started spending time with Keisha. But Victoria's family had connections that went beyond the courtroom. Kevin's business began to suffer as investors questioned his stability. Board members whispered about his personal life. Contracts were mysteriously canceled. Partnerships that had been solid for years suddenly became uncertain. Victoria's family was using their influence to make Kevin's professional life as difficult as possible. The custody battle raged for months. Kevin spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on legal fees. He endured depositions that lasted for days, character assassinations that destroyed his reputation, and media scrutiny that made his life a living hell. There were nights when he wondered if Victoria was right, if he was being selfish, if he should just give up and let her have Tyler. But then he would remember Tyler's first words in over a year. He would remember his son asking him to marry Keisha. He would remember how Tyler had smiled for the first time in months when Keisha was around. Kevin knew he was fighting for more than just custody. He was fighting for Tyler's right to be loved and accepted exactly as he was. The turning point came during the final custody hearing. Tyler was brought to court so the judge could speak with him privately about his preferences. The 8-year-old boy sat in the witness chair, his blue elephant toy clutched in his hands, his noise-canceling headphones around his neck. He looked so small and vulnerable in that massive courtroom, surrounded by lawyers and reporters and strangers who were deciding his future. The judge, a kind woman named Judge Patterson, spoke gently to Tyler. "Tyler, can you tell me who you want to live with?" Tyler looked around the courtroom with those big, innocent eyes. He saw his father, who was fighting tears. He saw his mother, who looked angry and impatient. He saw lawyers and reporters and strangers who were deciding his future. Then Tyler spoke, his voice clear and strong. "I want to stay with Daddy." Judge Patterson nodded. "Can you tell me why, Tyler?" Tyler thought for a moment, then said something that brought tears to every eye in the courtroom. "Daddy loves me. Mommy says I'm too much work, but Daddy says I'm perfect just the way I am." Victoria's face went pale. Her lawyers tried to object, but Judge Patterson held up her hand for silence. "Tyler," the judge continued gently, "can you tell me more about how your parents treat you?" Tyler's voice was matter-of-fact, the way children speak when they're telling the truth without understanding how devastating it might be. "Mommy gets mad when I flap my hands. She says I look stupid. She locks her door when I'm sad. She says I should go live somewhere else with other kids like me." The courtroom was completely silent. Even the court reporter had stopped typing to listen. "But Daddy hugs me when I'm scared. He reads me stories. He doesn't get mad when I can't talk. He takes me to see Keisha." Then Tyler asked a question that changed everything. "Where's Keisha? Why isn't she here? I love Keisha too." The judge looked confused. "Who is Keisha, Tyler?" Tyler's face lit up for the first time since he had entered the courtroom. "She's nice. She helps me when I'm scared. She doesn't get mad when I can't talk. She sings to me. She shows me how to make patterns with my hands. She makes me feel better when the world is too loud." Tyler paused, then added with the innocent honesty that only children possess, "Daddy should marry her. Then we could be a real family." In that moment, Judge Patterson saw something that all the lawyers and depositions and arguments couldn't show her. She saw a child who had been damaged by his mother's rejection, but healed by his father's love and a stranger's kindness. She saw a boy who understood love in its purest form, who didn't care about skin color or social status or what other people thought. Tyler's innocent words about loving Keisha revealed the pure, unconditional love that children are capable of. He didn't see a black waitress or a white billionaire or a mixed-race family. He saw people who cared about him, who accepted him, who made him feel safe and loved. Judge Patterson made her decision that day. Tyler would stay with his father. Victoria's threats, her family's influence, her lawyer's arguments. None of it mattered when faced with a child's simple truth about love. But Kevin's victory in court was only the beginning. Because now he had to find Keisha and somehow convince her to take a chance on a love that had already cost them both so much. 6 months later, Kevin's life looked completely different. The custody battle was over, and Tyler was thriving in ways Kevin never imagined possible. Victoria had been exposed in court for who she really was, and the judge's decision was swift and decisive. Tyler belonged with his father, and nothing Victoria or her family could do would change that. But Kevin didn't stop there. The first thing he did after winning custody was track down Keisha, who moved back to Alabama with her brother Danny. She has been working at a small diner in her hometown, barely making ends meet, when Kevin showed up at her door with an offer that would change everything. "I want to fund your education," Kevin told her. "I want to help you open that therapy center you've always dreamed of. Not because I feel guilty, not because I owe you anything, but because the world needs more people like you." Keisha was hesitant at first. She was afraid of being seen as a gold digger, afraid of what people would think, afraid of getting her hopes up only to be disappointed again. But Kevin was persistent, and more importantly, he was genuine. This wasn't about charity or pity. This was about recognizing Keisha's incredible gift and giving her the resources to share it with the world. Together, they opened the Tyler's Voice Foundation, a therapeutic center dedicated to helping special needs children and their families. Kevin provided the funding, but Keisha was the heart and soul of the operation. She hired other therapists who shared her passion, created programs that focused on acceptance and understanding, and built a place where children like Tyler could feel safe and loved. As they worked side by side, something beautiful began to bloom between them. Their professional relationship slowly blossomed into a deep, meaningful romance. Kevin found himself falling in love with Keisha's compassion, her strength, her unwavering dedication to helping others. Keisha discovered that beneath Kevin's billionaire exterior was a man who genuinely cared about making the world a better place. Tyler flourished in this new environment. He was speaking regularly now, attending a special school that understood his needs, and making friends for the first time in his life. Danny, Keisha's brother, moved in with them and was receiving the best care money could buy. The two boys became inseparable, showing Kevin and Keisha that love truly has no boundaries. After months of growing closer, Kevin knew he wanted to spend the rest of his life with Keisha. He planned the proposal carefully, choosing the most meaningful location he could think of, the same restaurant where they had first met, where Tyler had first spoken, where their journey together had begun. On a quiet Tuesday evening, Kevin brought Keisha and Tyler to their old table. Tyler was in on the plan, clutching a small velvet box in his hands and practically vibrating with excitement. Danny was there too, grinning from ear to ear as he watched his sister's face. "Keisha," Kevin began, his voice shaking with emotion, "6 months ago, you saved my son's life, but what I didn't realize at the time was that you were saving mine too. You taught me what real love looks like. You showed me that a family isn't defined by blood or money or social status. It's defined by the people who choose to love and support each other unconditionally." Kevin dropped to one knee as Tyler proudly presented the ring. "Will you marry me? Will you help me raise Tyler? Will you let me spend the rest of my life proving that I'm worthy of the love you've shown us?" Keisha's tears were flowing freely as she looked at this man who became her everything, at the little boy who became like a son to her, at her brother who was beaming with joy. "Yes," she whispered, and then louder, Yes, of course, yes. The wedding took place 3 months later in the garden of their new home. It was a beautiful, intimate ceremony, with only their closest friends and family in attendance. Tyler served as the ring bearer, walking proudly down the aisle in his little tuxedo, his blue elephant toy tucked safely in his pocket. Danny was a groomsman, standing tall and proud despite his disabilities, showing everyone that love truly conquers all. As the evening wound down, Kevin and Keisha swayed together on the dance floor, Tyler and Danny playing nearby under the twinkling lights. Kevin looked at his new wife, at his son, who was laughing and playing like any other child, at Danny, who had become like a second son to him, and felt a peace he had never known before. If this story touched your heart and gave you hope that love can conquer even the most impossible obstacles, please subscribe, because everyone deserves to hear stories that remind us what's truly important in life. If you enjoyed this story, like, subscribe, and share with others so they can learn too. See you in our next video.